October 25th, 1415. 6,000 English soldiers stand in mud up to their knees. 20,000 French knights wait on horses across a plowed field near a village called Agincourt. The English king is 28 years old. Half his men have dysentery. They marched 260 miles in 17 days with almost no food. The French have fresh troops, full plate armor, and the best cavalry in Europe. 3 hours later, 6,000 Frenchmen lie dead in that mud. The English lose fewer than 500. How does an army that sick, that outnumbered, that exhausted, cut through the finest knights France can field? The answer sits in a yew bow 6 feet long, and in one decision that breaks every rule of warfare. His target is Harfleur, a fortified port at the mouth of the Seine. The French garrison numbers only 100, but 2 knights arrive, with 300 men-at-arms to reinforce them. The Sieur de Stouteville and the Sieur de Gaucourt take command. Henry surrounds the town on August 18th. His brother Thomas, Duke of Clarence, sets up camp on the east side, cutting off any relief. The English bring 12 great guns and traditional siege artillery. They blast the walls for 5 weeks. Mining operations fail because the French dig countermines and launch sorties. On September 17th, Henry sends a message into Harfleur: surrender by 1 p.m. the next day or face a general assault. The garrison can see storming parties forming up. Sailors from the English fleet join the ranks. On September 22nd, Harfleur surrenders. The garrison becomes prisoners of war. Able-bodied townsmen who swear loyalty can stay. Everyone else, women, children, the old, the sick, gets forced out. Professor Anne Curry, working from surviving sick lists at the National Archives in Kew and the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris, identifies 1,330 men sent home and 36 confirmed dead during the siege. Her research, published in Agincourt, A New History in 2005 and updated in 2015, challenges the higher death tolls. Other historians, including Clifford Rogers and Juliet Barker, argue that records are incomplete and that dysentery killed far more than 36. Among the confirmed dead are Bishop Courtenay and the Earl of Suffolk. The campaign season is ending. Winter approaches. Henry originally planned to march on Paris. Now he has a depleted army and 1 captured port to show for massive expense. On October 8th, he leaves Harfleur with roughly 9,000 men. Some sources say 8,500. Curry's administrative records suggest the force includes 1,500 men-at-arms and 7,000 archers. Henry decides to march north to Calais. The English held port on the Channel to winter and regroup. This is not a feudal levy, but a paid force similar to the English system. The French hope to field 9,000 troops, but the army is not ready in time to relieve Harfleur. When Henry marches north, the French move to block him at the Somme. They destroy bridges, guard the fords, scorch the countryside to deny supplies. Henry is forced to march inland away from Calais, searching for a crossing. On October 19th, the English find a shallow ford near Voyenne, south of Péronne. They cross the Somme and turn north again toward the coast. The French shadow them. By October 24th, a large French force intercepts Henry near the village of Agincourt. Both armies face each other. The French decline to attack that day, waiting for more troops to arrive. The Duke of Brabant, the Duke of Anjou, the Duke of Brittany, each commanding 1,000 to 2,000 men, are marching to join. The 2 armies spend the night of October 24th on open ground. Henry enforces absolute silence in the English ranks. Men-at-arms and knights are warned that breaking silence costs them their horses and armor. Lower ranks lose their right ear. If you value documented medieval military history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual using sources from Anne Curry's exhaustive archival work published in Agincourt. A New History, drawing on administrative records from the National Archives and French Archives, and from the Journal of Conflict Archaeology's 2005 study by Tim Sutherland on battlefield archaeology, which revealed that, despite extensive surveys, no definitive battlefield artifacts have been found at the traditionally designated Agincourt site, leading to ongoing debate about the exact location. Historian Michael Livingston's 2023 analysis in the Journal of Medieval Military History uses topographical reconstruction to argue the battle was fought west of the traditional site, as the narrow strip between Tramecourt and Azincourt woods could not physically accommodate even the minimum troop numbers. Now back to the information. Designated site. Geophysical surveys revealed possible grave pits and a former chapel foundation, but no weapons, no arrowheads, no confirmed evidence of combat. Livingston's terrain analysis shows the traditional site is too narrow, less than 750 yards, to fit both armies. He argues the battle occurred west of Azincourt, in a wider valley. For now, what matters is this. Henry deploys his army across a narrow front bounded by woods on both flanks. The field is recently plowed. Heavy rains over the past week turn it into deep mud. The English are divided into 3 battles. The center, commanded by Henry himself. The right wing, led by Edward, Duke of York. The left wing, under Baron Thomas Camoys, an experienced veteran, Sir Thomas Erpingham commands the archers. He is 60 years old, one of the oldest men on the field. He has served under John of Gaunt, fought in Spain, Scotland, Prussia, and the Holy Land. His military career spans 47 years. He has never fought a pitched battle before Agincourt. French chroniclers Jean Lefebvre, Enguerrand de Monstrelet, and Jean de Wavrin all record his role. No English sources mention him by name, but the French saw everything. 4-3, not the legendary 5-1. Professor Bertrand Schnerb at the University of Lille estimates 12,000 to 15,000 French troops. Regardless of exact numbers, the French outnumber the English significantly. The French army is commanded by Constable Charles d'Albret and Marshal Jean Lemangre, called Boucicaut. King Charles VI of France does not command. He suffers from psychotic illness and mental incapacity. The French force consists of heavy cavalry, dismounted knights in full plate armor, crossbowmen and infantry levied from towns, and recruited mercenaries from Italian cities. The French nobility makes up a massive portion of the army. They are there not as mercenaries, but through feudal obligation, summoned by the arriere-ban. This is important. These men do not appear in French pay records. They fight because they must. Overwhelm the English center. The French are confident. They have numbers, armor, training, and position. It brings the English flanks right up to the woods on either side at the narrowest point of the battlefield. Henry has used the terrain to negate French numbers. The French cannot flank. They can only come straight ahead. When satisfied, he throws his marshal's baton into the air. He shouts what the French hear as ne stroke. His Norfolk accent distorts the English words, now strike. He dismounts and moves with his banner to join the king. The archers open fire. The longbow has an effective range of 250 yards. Some sources say 300. The arrows do not have to kill. They only have to provoke. The storm of arrows goads the French into action. The French cavalry charges. Somewhere between 400 and 500 horsemen out of the available 2,000 to 2,500 make the charge. The rest hesitate. The charge is undermanned and poorly coordinated. The archers hold. They wait until the horses reach 220 to 240 yards. Then they loose volley after volley. Wounded horses panic. Riders are thrown, killed, suffer agonizing wounds from arrows that cannot penetrate plate armor but can hit unprotected horses, strike gaps in armor, pierce eye slits. The cavalry charge collapses. Retreating horses crash into the advancing French men-at-arms. Chaos spreads. They march through mud that sucks at their boots, through a field churned by thousands of hooves. The mud is knee-deep in places. The weight of armor, 60 to 80 pounds of steel, drags men down. Those who fall cannot get up without help. The archers keep shooting. Arrows rain down from 250 yards, 200, 150. The arrows cannot penetrate good plate armor, but they strike visors, joints, gaps. They wound, disorient, terrify. The French formation loses cohesion. Men bunched together, pushed by those behind, unable to spread out because the woods pin them in. The narrowness of the field compresses them into a dense mass. But the French are so tightly packed they cannot use their weapons effectively. Swords and axes need space to swing. The crush prevents it. English men-at-arms hold the line. The archers, seeing the French bogged down, drop their bows. They grab mallets, daggers, axes, any close weapon. They are lightly armored, mobile, unaffected by chivalry. They attack French knights from the sides, the rear. They go for weak points. Helmets get torn off. Visors lifted, daggers thrust through eye slits. Men in full armor, exhausted from the march through mud, unable to move in the press, get pulled down and killed with brutal efficiency. Mud, arrows crushing, no room to fight. The English hold. The archers slaughter knights who cannot defend themselves. Bodies pile up. The field turns into a nightmare of steel, mud, blood, and screaming horses. Henry is struck in the helmet with a weapon that dents the crown fitted to it. He survives. He keeps fighting. Exeter gives him updates. The English are holding, winning. If the French rally, if a fresh force attacks from the rear, the prisoners could break free, grab weapons from the field, overwhelm his exhausted men. His army is intermingled with the enemy. If fighting resumes, English longbowmen firing into the mass will kill their own. Henry makes his decision. These are noblemen, worth ransoms, not common soldiers. Killing defenseless men dishonors everyone. Henry does not care. He commands it. A squire takes 200 archers to carry out the executions. The method is brutal. Knights in armor cannot be killed easily. Helmets must be removed or visors lifted, throats cut, heads and faces hacked. Some prisoners resist even that. They are stabbed through eye slits in their bassinets. Jean Lefebvre, who witnesses the massacre, describes them as cut in pieces, heads and faces. How many die? Estimates range from hundreds to over 2,000. John Keegan, in his study The Face of Battle, suggests the number is lower. 200 archers working quickly could not kill thousands before the order is rescinded. But enough die to make the point. The remaining prisoners submit. They do not resist. The Third French battle sees what is happening. They do not attack. They leave the field. The battle ends. Total time from the first arrow to the final French withdrawal, somewhere between 30 minutes and 3 hours. Sources conflict. What is certain is this: the French suffer catastrophic losses. At least 2,600 more bodies are found without coats of arms to identify them. Total French dead, around 6,000. Some estimates go as high as 10,000. The casualties read like a roll call of French nobility: 3 dukes dead, the Duke of Alençon, the Duke of Brabant, the Duke of Bar, 6 counts killed, 90 barons, the Constable of France, Charles d'Albret, the Admiral of France, almost 2,000 knights. Entire noble families are wiped out in the male line. In some regions, an entire generation of landed nobility is annihilated. The bailiffs of 9 major northern towns are killed, often with their sons, relatives, supporters. The battle cuts a great swath through the natural leaders of French society in Artois, Ponthieu, Normandy, Picardy. Modern record evidence identifies at least 112 Englishmen killed in the fighting. Monstrelet reports 600 English dead. The Duke of York, the Earl of Suffolk, a handful of knights and men-at-arms. Most English sources say 400 to 500 total casualties. The disparity is staggering. 1 English death for every 10 to 15 French deaths. Prisoners number between 700 and 2,200, depending on the source. Among them, the Duke of Orléans, the Duke of Bourbon, the Counts of Eu, Vendôme, Richemont, Harcourt, Marshal Jean Le Mangre. These men are worth fortunes in ransom. Their capture enriches English captors beyond imagination. Comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script uses factual sources, including contemporary eyewitness accounts from the Gesta Henrici Quinti, written around 1417 by a chaplain in Henry's household who was present in the baggage train, Burgundian chronicles by Jean Lefebvre de Saint-Remy, who fought at the battle, and Enguerrand de Monstrelet, who compiled eyewitness reports, plus modern analysis from the Journal of Veur. Medieval Military History, Volume 21, published in 2023, which examines battlefield terrain and troop deployment using experimental archaeology and topographical reconstruction. Now back to the information. English archers used it to devastating effect at Crécy in 1346 and Poitiers in 1356. The French knew what it could do. They had 70 years to adapt. They did not, or they tried and failed. The crossbow, preferred by French and Italian forces, has advantages. It requires less training. Any man can learn to use one in weeks. The longbow takes years of practice, starting in childhood. English archers began training as early as 8 years old. The draw weight on a warbow is 100 to 160 pounds. Only men with years of conditioning can pull it repeatedly. Only England and Wales produce these archers in the numbers needed. The crossbow shoots slower, maybe 3 bolts per minute. The longbow fires 10 to 15 arrows per minute in the hands of a skilled archer. At Agincourt, Henry fields approximately 7,000 archers. If each shoots 10 arrows per minute, that is 70,000 arrows per minute raining down on the French. The volume of fire is incomprehensible. The French at Agincourt were the best. So how do the arrows kill? They do not, mostly. They kill horses. They strike gaps in armor, visors, joints, hands, feet. They wound and terrify more than they kill outright. What the longbow does is disrupt formations, panic cavalry, slow advances, create chaos. It forces the French to attack through a storm of projectiles that wound, disorient, exhaust. By the time the French reach the English line, they are disorganized, tired, and compressed into a killing space where the lightly armored English can butcher them. The press of men behind them tramples them. Some suffocate under the weight of bodies in mud. The English, mostly archers without heavy armor, move easily. They can attack, retreat, reposition. The French cannot. They can only come straight ahead, compressed into a front that favors the defenders. This is battlefield genius, or desperate gamble, or both. Henry has no choice. He cannot retreat. He cannot avoid battle. He can only position his exhausted, outnumbered, sick army in the one spot where terrain and tactics give him a chance. Only 400 to 500 riders charge when 2,000 to 2,500 are available. Why? Arrogance, indiscipline, eagerness for individual glory over tactical sense. The French nobility brushes aside command structure. They charge in anger and haste. The result is disaster. The dismounted knights advancing in the first and second battles face the same problem. They are packed so tightly by the narrow field that they cannot fight effectively. Swords, axes, polearms need room to swing. The crush prevents it. The men behind keep pushing forward, trampling those in front, creating a human avalanche that collapses under its own weight. But the plan requires coordination, discipline, and favorable conditions. The French have none of these. The mud destroys the cavalry charge. The narrow field destroys formation integrity. The longbow storm destroys morale. By the time French knights reach the English line, they are beaten men still fighting. His men see it. They know their king bleeds with them. This is not a lord watching from a hill. This is a warrior king in the mud and blood. It matters. Medieval armies break when leaders fall or flee. Henry neither falls nor flees. His presence holds the line. Justices Samuel Alito and Ruth Bader Ginsburg presided. Henry was unanimously found guilty based on evolving standards of civil society. But in 1415, contemporary chroniclers do not criticize Henry. Even French chroniclers do not blame him. They blame the French commanders who created the situation. The laws of war in the 15th century are different. Killing prisoners is horrific, but not illegal. The question is whether it is necessary. Henry believes it is. His army is exhausted. His prisoners outnumber his guards. A fresh French force, he thinks, is attacking from the rear. If prisoners break free and rearm, the English are finished. He makes the call. The executions stop when the threat passes. The third French battle leaves the field. The attack on the baggage turns out to be local stealing, not a military operation. Henry rescinds the order, but the damage is done. Hundreds, maybe thousands of French noblemen are butchered while defenseless. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. Shakespeare's Henry is a warrior king, a leader who inspires through words and deeds. The play shapes how the English remember Agincourt for centuries. It also shapes how they misremember it. Shakespeare exaggerates the odds, 5 or 10 to 1 instead of 2 or 3 to 1. He adds drama to the prisoner killing, linking it to the attack on the baggage train and the death of boys. The historical record is murkier. Only one chronicle, Pierre Finin's, links the prisoner order to the baggage raid. All others say Henry gave the order because he was informed a new French force was approaching. Shakespeare also sanitizes the killing. In the play, Henry gives the order off stage. The horror is mentioned but not shown. The reality, men with their helmets torn off and faces hacked apart, does not fit the heroic narrative. Agincourt's immediate impact is significant but limited. Henry marches to Calais after the battle. His army is too weakened to continue the campaign. He winters in England. The victory boosts English morale and prestige. It terrifies the French. It gives Henry leverage in negotiations. In 1420, the Treaty of Troyes recognizes Henry as regent of France and heir to the French throne. Henry marries Catherine, daughter of King Charles VI. Their son, also named Henry, is born in 1421. England seems poised to rule both kingdoms. But Henry dies in 1422 at age 35. Dysentery, the same disease that ravaged his army at Harfleur, kills him at the Château de Vincennes. His son becomes king at 9 months old. The dual monarchy collapses within a generation. The French rally under Joan of Arc in 1429. They lift the siege of Orléans. They drive the English out of France territory by territory. By 1453, the Hundred Years' War ends with English defeat. England loses all its French possessions except Calais. Agincourt, for all its glory, changes nothing in the long run. It demonstrates that well-positioned infantry with superior missile weapons can defeat numerically superior heavy cavalry. This is not a new lesson. The Scots proved it at Bannockburn in 1314. The English proved it at Crécy and Poitiers. But Agincourt cements the lesson. The age of the armored knight as the dominant battlefield force is ending. Gunpowder will finish the job, but the longbow shows the way. Disciplined infantry, properly deployed, properly armed, can stand against anything. The battle becomes part of English identity, but the myth obscures the reality. Agincourt is not a miracle. It is terrain, tactics, technology, and French mistakes. It is an exhausted English army, gambling everything on one battle because they have no other choice. It is French nobility charging into mud and arrows because their culture values individual glory over tactical discipline. It is brutal, chaotic, and decided by factors both sides only partially control. For French nobles, these finds are documented in newspaper accounts from the time. But modern surveys find nothing. The Journal of Conflict Archaeology article by Tim Sutherland in 2005 points out that medieval battlefields rarely leave much evidence. Valuable items like coins get picked up immediately. Metal corrodes. Farming disturbs layers. 600 years erases most traces. The lack of artifacts does not mean the battle did not happen. It means we cannot prove where it happened with physical evidence. Trimecourt and Azincourt Woods is too small. Even the minimum estimates of English troops cannot fit. Livingston reconstructs the medieval landscape using old maps, examines how much space 8,000 to 9,000 men would need in battle formation, factors in maneuver room for stakes and archers, and concludes the traditional site is impossible. His proposed location is a wider valley west of Azincourt. This site fits the descriptions in chronicles and provides enough space for the armies, but without artifacts, it remains a hypothesis. She argues the French numbered around 12,000, not 20,000 or more. This gives a ratio of 4 to 3, not 5 to 1. Her methodology is rigorous. She traces every soldier she can find in the records. She accounts for those who died or were sent home from Harfleur. She builds a database of over 250,000 names of soldiers who served the English crown between 1369 and 1453. This project, The Soldier in Later Medieval England, is groundbreaking. It shows how many people fought, how they were paid, how they were organized. French nobles fighting under feudal obligation would not appear in pay records. They were summoned by the arriere band, not hired as mercenaries. Curry's method works well for the English, who kept detailed pay records. It works less well for the French, whose system was different and whose records are incomplete. Critics like Juliet Barker, Jonathan Sumption, and Clifford Rogers argue that contemporary chronicle accounts, even with their exaggerations, give a better sense of the actual numbers. These chronicles were written by men who were there or who interviewed eyewitnesses. They may inflate French numbers for dramatic effect, but they saw the armies, they saw the battlefield. Their estimates deserve weight. The exact ratio we will never know. What we know is this: the French outnumbered the English significantly. The English won decisively. The French suffered catastrophic casualties. These facts are undisputed. In 1429, at the Battle of Patay, French knights charge English archers before they can deploy stakes in formation. 2,500 English longbowmen are killed for the loss of 100 French. The French prove that the longbow is not invincible. Proper reconnaissance, concealed movement, and rapid assault can defeat it. The longbow requires time and space to be effective. Deny those, and archers are helpless against heavy cavalry. As wars grow larger and armies need more men quickly, the advantage shifts to gunpowder. The longbow's last major use in English armies is in the 16th century. After that, it becomes obsolete. The French charge into a storm of wood and iron that never stops. The archers shoot until their fingers bleed, until the French formations collapse, until the field is covered with dead horses and wounded men. Then they drop their bows, grab their mallets and daggers, and finish the job. This is not chivalry, this is industrial-scale killing. The longbow, in the hands of professional soldiers, is a weapon of mass slaughter. The French nobility at Agincourt represents the military and political elite of an entire generation. The casualty list includes men whose families shaped French politics for centuries. The Duke of Brabant arrives late and charges into the battle without proper armor. He is killed. The Duke of Alençon leads a desperate assault on Henry himself. He is killed within striking distance of the king. The Duke of Bar fights in the first line. He is killed. These men are not random soldiers. They are the leaders of France. Their deaths create a power vacuum that weakens French resistance for years. The counts, the barons, the knights, they die by the hundreds. Entire families lose their male heirs in a single afternoon. In Artois, Ponthieu, Normandy, Picardy, the nobility is gutted. The social and political consequences last for decades. How else could 6,000 sick men defeat 20,000 healthy ones? Divine intervention, national superiority, proof that the English are chosen. This narrative takes hold. It persists for centuries. Even now, Agincourt is remembered in England with pride. The Welsh also claim it, pointing to the large number of Welsh archers in Henry's army. Some estimates say 500 of the most elite archers are Welsh. The Welsh longbowman becomes a symbol of Welsh contribution to English victories, a source of pride, despite the complicated relationship between Wales and England. The French oblige him by charging into mud. The rain falls at the right time. The terrain favors him. He wins, but it is a near thing. If the French had waited, if they had let hunger and disease finish the English, they would have won without fighting. If the field had been dry, the French cavalry might have broken the archers. If the French commanders had maintained discipline and attacked in coordinated waves instead of a chaotic rush, the outcome might have been different. Victorious through a combination of planning, luck, and the enemy's errors. The common soldier, the archer, the foot soldier dies. The nobleman is captured, ransomed, and lives to fight again. This system maintains the social hierarchy and enriches the victors. Henry's order breaks the system. It says that necessity trumps honor, survival trumps chivalry. This is modern total war thinking in a medieval context. It shocks people. His prisoners outnumber his guards. He thinks a fresh French force is attacking. If prisoners break free, his army is finished. He makes a battlefield decision in the heat of crisis. Later analysts can debate morality and legality. Henry has seconds to decide. He chooses his men over his prisoners. This is pragmatism, not morality. Whether it is justified depends on whether the threat is real. The threat turns out to be exaggerated. The Third French battle leaves without attacking. The baggage raid is not a serious assault. Henry rescinds the order, but by then, hundreds or thousands are dead. During his captivity, he writes poetry, some of the finest French verse of the 15th century. His ransom is so expensive it nearly bankrupts his family. Other prisoners are luckier. They negotiate faster, pay less, return home sooner. But all face financial ruin. Ransoms are calculated based on wealth and status. A duke pays more than a count. A count pays more than a baron. The sums are staggering. Families sell estates, borrow money, petition the king for relief. The economic impact of Agincourt's ransoms flows through French society for decades. It is why they capture rather than kill. Why they risk themselves to take prisoners instead of finishing enemies on the ground. Agincourt's prisoners represent fortunes. Until Henry orders them killed, the English army is looking at the biggest payday of their lives. The order to kill is not just morally shocking, it is economically devastating to the men who captured those prisoners. they lose their ransoms. This is why English knights refuse to participate. It is not just honor, it is money. Use terrain to negate enemy numbers. Deploy archers on the flanks behind stakes. Hold the center with dismounted men-at-arms. Let the enemy attack. Let arrows and stakes break their charge. Let mud and exhaustion weaken them. Then counterattack. This formula wins battles. After Agincourt, Henry has to return to France with larger armies to actually occupy land. He campaigns in 1417 to 1420, conquering Normandy piece by piece. This requires sieges, garrisons, administration, and constant warfare. Agincourt gives him prestige, but not France. The Treaty of Troyes gives him the title, but not the reality. When he dies in 1422, his infant son inherits a war that cannot be won. The English lack the resources to hold France against a determined enemy. Joan of Arc rallies French resistance. The English are driven out. Agincourt, for all its glory, is a tactical victory without strategic consequence. But surveys find nothing. Livingston's alternative site, west of Agincourt, fits the spatial requirements but lacks direct documentary confirmation. Chronicles mention Agincourt because it is the nearest fortified place, not necessarily because the battle was fought there. Medieval battles are often named after the nearest town, not the exact site. The Battle of Waterloo was not fought in Waterloo, it was fought south of the town. The same may be true for Agincourt. If the battlefield exists, artifacts may emerge. Until then, the debate continues. The English do not lose a single commander. The disparity is almost unbelievable, yet 7 contemporary chroniclers, 3 English and 4 Burgundian, all confirm it. The numbers vary in detail, but agree in essence. The French are destroyed. The English win decisively. It is not about equipment. The French have better armor. It is not about position. The English are retreating. It is about terrain, tactics, leadership, and mistakes. Henry chooses the battlefield. He positions his men to maximize their strengths and minimize French advantages. He uses the mud, the woods, the narrow field. He trusts his longbowmen. He fights alongside his men. These are leadership decisions that matter. They do not wait for all their reinforcements. They charge piecemeal. They let pride and eagerness override tactics. They attack into mud through a narrow front where their numbers mean nothing. They fail to coordinate cavalry and infantry. They pack men so tightly they cannot fight. These are command failures that matter. An English army that should have been destroyed marching away victorious, and a legend that lasts 6 centuries. Agincourt becomes shorthand for underdog victory, for courage against odds, for the power of discipline and tactics over raw numbers. Knights drowning in steel and shit. Bodies piled so high you cannot see the ground. A king ordering defenseless prisoners killed because he is afraid. Archers cutting throats and smashing skulls with mallets. This is war. This is Agincourt. No weapons. The graves, if they exist, are elsewhere, or they were looted centuries ago, or the records are wrong. In 1818, Sir John Woodford mapped the area and marked where he believed the graves were. His map shows a spot that later became the Calvaire enclosure, but excavations there found nothing related to the battle. Geophysical surveys nearby show possible pits and foundations. These may be graves, or storage pits, or something else. Without excavation, we cannot know. This is the paradox of medieval archaeology. The most important events leave the least physical trace. The French lose catastrophically. Agincourt remains an English victory, a French disaster, and a case study in medieval warfare. Then dysentery kills him at 35. The disease that ravaged his army at Harfleur takes him at Vincennes. He dies in bed, not on the battlefield. His body is brought back to England. He is buried in Westminster Abbey on November 7th, 1422. 7 years earlier, he gave orders that his friend and Privy Council member Richard Courtenay, who died of dysentery at Harfleur, be buried at the site of Henry's own tomb. Courtenay is there waiting. In England, Agincourt is legend. In France, it is trauma. Both nations remember. Both nations tell the story differently. The English celebrate courage and victory. The French mourn loss and humiliation. 600 years later, the battle still matters. Not for its strategic impact, which was minimal, not for its political consequences, which were temporary, but for what it represents, the triumph of will over numbers, the power of position and tactics, the brutality of medieval war, the randomness of history. 6,000 English soldiers faced 20,000 French knights in a muddy field and won. That improbable fact shapes how both nations see themselves. Their bodies, if they still exist, have never been found. Their names, many of them, are recorded in chronicles and rolls, but their graves are lost. The battlefield is lost. What remains is the story, the numbers, the legend.